The emergency beacon cut through the void of space like a desperate scream. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the human exploration vessel Resilience, watching the distress signal pulse red on her tactical display. Her crew of 35 had been conducting routine stellar surveys in the outer rim when the transmission reached them. "Signal analysis complete, Captain," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "It's a Zephyrian emergency code. Their ship appears to be a civilian transport, approximately 12 hours from critical hull failure." Chen frowned. The Zephyrians were a peaceful species known throughout the galaxy for their advanced agricultural techniques and beautiful crystal cities. They resembled large, graceful birds with iridescent feathers that shifted colors based on their emotions. What troubled Chen was their location. This sector was supposed to be empty. "Any indication of what caused their distress?" she asked. "Negative, Captain. The signal is automated. No voice communication detected." Chen studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian ship was 3 hours away at maximum burn, but their fuel reserves were already running low from the extended survey mission. Helping them would mean potentially stranding her own crew. "Captain," called out Ensign Williams from the sensor station, his voice tight with concern. "I'm detecting multiple energy signatures in the area. Pirates, by the look of their drive emissions." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about the Karthak raiders who plagued this region of space. They were a savage species that had refused all diplomatic contact with the Galactic Council, preferring to take what they needed through violence. Their ships were fast, heavily armed, and they showed no mercy to any species they encountered. "How many ships?" Chen asked. 3, possibly 4. They're maintaining radio silence, but their heat signatures suggest they're circling the Zephyrian vessel. Chief Engineer Rodriguez spoke up from her station. "Captain, if we divert course now, we'll be running on fumes by the time we reach the nearest starbase. And if those are Karthak ships?" Chen understood the unspoken concern. The Resilience was an exploration vessel, not a warship. While they carried defensive weapons, they were no match for dedicated pirate raiders. Engaging the Karthak would likely result in the loss of her ship and crew. "Ma'am," Torres interrupted, "I'm receiving a secondary transmission from the Zephyrian ship. It's weak, but I can make out parts of it." "Put it through." Static filled the bridge speakers, followed by a melodic but distressed voice speaking in accented Standard Galactic. "Anyone receiving this, transport ship Wind Whisper, hull breach in Sector 7, life support failing, we have children aboard, 23 cubs, please." The transmission cut to static. The bridge crew exchanged glances. 23 children were aboard that dying ship, with pirates closing in. Chen felt the weight of command settle heavily on her shoulders. In her 15 years of space service, she had faced difficult decisions before, but none quite like this. "Captain," said Commander Marcus Blake, her second-in-command, stepping closer to her station. "The regulations are clear about civilian rescues. We're obligated to render aid when possible." "When possible" being the key phrase, Chen replied quietly. "We have our own crew to think about." "With respect, ma'am, those are children out there." Chen looked around her bridge. These men and women had served with her through dangerous deep space missions, first contact situations, and natural disasters. They trusted her judgment, and she had never led them into a situation they couldn't handle. But she also saw something in their eyes, the same thing that had drawn them to exploration service in the first place. Humanity's inexplicable drive to help others, regardless of the cost. "Williams, give me a detailed tactical analysis of the pirate ships." The young ensign's fingers flew over his controls. 3 confirmed Karthak raiders, Viper class. Fast attack ships with heavy plasma cannons. There might be a 4th ship behind the second moon, but the signature is too faint to confirm. Our chances of successful engagement? Williams hesitated. "Honestly, Captain. Not good. Our shields are rated for exploration hazards, not military-grade weapons. We might survive one, maybe two passes if we're lucky. And, our chances of extracting the Zephyrian survivors without engagement? Near zero. The pirates are in a perfect intercept pattern. Any ship entering that area will have to go through them. Chen walked to the forward view screen, staring out at the stars. Somewhere among them, 23 children were dying while pirates decided their fate. She thought about her own daughter, safe back on Earth, probably in school at this very moment. What would she want someone to do if the situation were reversed? "Captain," came a new voice from behind her. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, the ship's chief medical officer, had entered the bridge. "I couldn't help but overhear. How many survivors are we talking about?" "Unknown total, but at least 23 children. Zephyrian cubs don't have fully developed respiratory systems until they're 10 years old," Dr. Reeves said quietly. "If their life support fails..." She didn't need to finish. Everyone on the bridge understood. Chen turned back to her crew. These people had volunteered for deep space exploration knowing the risks. They had signed up to push the boundaries of human knowledge and capability. But, more than that, they had signed up because they believed in something greater than themselves. "All stations, prepare for course change. Set intercept course for the Zephyrian vessel, maximum burn." "Captain," Commander Blake said, "what's the plan?" Chen smiled grimly. "We're going to do what humans do best, Marcus. We're going to improvise." The Resilience changed course, her engines burning bright against the cosmic dark. As they approached the crisis zone, Chen called up the ship's tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Jessica Park. "Park, I need options. How do we extract survivors from a hostile environment with minimal risk to our crew?" "The Zephyrian ship is a standard Peacewing-class transport," Park replied, studying her displays. "It has emergency pods, but they won't launch if the ship's main computer is damaged. We could try to dock and transfer survivors manually, but that would leave us sitting stationary while under fire." "What about a distraction? Against Karthak raiders? They're not known for their curiosity. They'll probably just shoot anything that moves." Chen considered their options. The human ship was faster than the Zephyrian transport but slower than the Karthak raiders. Their weapons were adequate for self-defense but insufficient for a direct assault. Their shields could withstand some punishment but not a sustained attack. "Captain," Torres called out, "I'm getting another transmission from the Wind Whisper. It's stronger this time. Let's hear it." The voice that came through the speakers was clearer now, though still strained with exhaustion and fear. It belonged to a female Zephyrian, her melodic tone corrupted by static and desperation. "This is Captain Skyweaver Enthali of the transport Wind Whisper. We are carrying refugees from the Kepler-7 mining disaster. Our ship suffered catastrophic damage during our escape. We have 47 souls aboard, including 23 cubs. Our hull will fail within 6 hours. The raiders have been circling us for 2 days, but they haven't attacked. I think they're waiting for us to die so they can scavenge our cargo without a fight." Chen's blood ran cold. The Kepler-7 disaster had been all over the news feeds 3 weeks ago. A mining platform had suffered a critical reactor failure, killing thousands and contaminating the entire system. These weren't just random travelers, they were survivors who had already endured unimaginable loss. "Can we respond?" she asked Torres. "Yes, ma'am. We're in range now. Open a channel." Chen straightened in her captain's chair. "Captain Enthali, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the human exploration ship Resilience. We have received your distress call and are moving to assist." There was a long pause before the response came, filled with what sounded like disbelief and hope. "Human ship, you're really there. Our sensors show Karthak raiders in the area. You should maintain distance for your own safety." "Negative, Wind Whisper. We're coming to get you out of there." Another pause, longer this time. When Enthali's voice returned, it carried a note of confusion that transcended species barriers. Captain Chen, forgive my directness, but why would you risk your ship and crew for aliens you've never met? Your species has no obligation to us. Your government has no treaties requiring this intervention. Chen looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. She saw determination, fear, resolve, and something else, something uniquely human that she struggled to put into words. Captain Enthali, she said finally, we help any child. The Zephyrian captain's response was immediate, her voice thick with emotion. I don't understand. You don't need to understand. Just be ready for extraction in 45 minutes. Chen closed the channel and turned to her crew. All right, people. Let's figure out how to pull off a miracle. Park, I want every possible tactical scenario analyzed. Rodriguez, push those engines beyond their safety limits if you have to. Reeves, prepare medical bay for mass casualties, including non-human physiology. Williams, keep tracking those pirate ships. I want to know if they so much as twitch. As the Resilience raced toward the stricken transport, Chen found herself thinking about her daughter again. Humanity had spread across the stars not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they had something most other species found baffling, an irrepressible urge to help others, even at great personal cost. The galaxy was full of logical species who made calculated decisions based on cost-benefit analysis. They formed alliances for mutual benefit, traded for profit, and fought only when victory was assured. Humans, on the other hand, had a disturbing tendency to throw themselves into impossible situations for the sake of complete strangers. The crew worked with quiet efficiency as they approached the crisis zone. Chen could feel the tension building, everyone knew they were about to attempt something that could get them all killed. But, no one suggested turning back. That wasn't the human way. Captain, Williams called out, his voice tight. The Carthax ships are moving. They've detected our approach. On the main screen, Chen could see the Zephyrian transport drifting helplessly, its hull scarred and venting atmosphere. Around it, 3 sleek Predator ships had begun to move, their dark hulls reflecting no light as they closed in like vultures. Time to intercept. 18 minutes at current speed. Chen gripped the arms of her captain's chair. 18 minutes to figure out how to save 47 lives while keeping her own crew alive. She had led diplomatic missions, scientific expeditions, and emergency rescues, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. Park, she said, show me everything we know about Carthax tactics. The tactical display shifted, showing historical engagement patterns of the raider species. They preferred to attack in coordinated strikes, using their superior speed to make hit-and-run attacks until their prey was disabled. They rarely fought fair fights, preferring to wait until their enemies were weakened or distracted. They're predators, Chen murmured, studying the patterns. They hunt the weak and injured. Yes, ma'am. But, they also retreat when faced with unexpected resistance. They're raiders, not warriors. They want easy targets. Chen nodded slowly. An idea was forming, dangerous, probably stupid, but it might work. Helm, change course. Take us directly toward the lead Carthax ship. Commander Blake looked at her in alarm. Captain. Trust me, Marcus. Torres, prepare to transmit on all frequencies. Williams, I want you to paint every one of those ships with our targeting sensors. Make it obvious. As the Resilience altered course, heading straight for the pirates instead of the damaged transport, Chen felt a familiar mix of fear and excitement. She was about to bet everything on her understanding of human nature, and her hope that it would be enough to confuse the hell out of the enemy. Transmission ready, Captain, Torres reported. Open channel to all ships in the area. When Torres nodded, Chen stood and spoke in her most authoritative voice, attention Carthax vessels. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human exploration ship Resilience. You are interfering with a humanitarian rescue operation. Withdraw immediately or we will consider you hostile. The channel closed, leaving the bridge in tense silence. For a long moment, nothing happened. The Karthak ships continued their approach to the transport while the Resilience raced toward them on an intercept course. Then, suddenly, the three raider ships broke formation. They scattered in different directions, clearly confused by the human ship's aggressive approach. Pirates expected their prey to run or hide, not charge straight at them while making demands. "They're pulling back," Williams reported, disbelief clear in his voice. "Not far enough," Chen replied. "Helm, pursue the lead ship. Keep us between them and the transport." For the next several minutes, the Resilience played a deadly game of tag with the Karthak raiders. Every time the pirates tried to approach the disabled transport, the human ship would move to intercept, forcing them to break off or risk a direct confrontation. But, Chen knew this tactic wouldn't work for long. Eventually, the pirates would realize that the Resilience was just one ship, and not even a military vessel at that. When they regrouped for a coordinated attack, her bluff would be called. "Torres, raise the wind whisper. Channel open, Captain. Captain Anthony, do you have any operational escape pods?" "Negative, human ship. The blast damage destroyed our pod bay. We would need direct transfer." Chen cursed under her breath. A docking procedure would take at least 20 minutes, leaving both ships vulnerable. But, there was no choice. "Prepare your people for emergency transfer. We're coming alongside." Captain Chen, Anthony's voice carried a note of desperate gratitude. "Whatever happens, know that you have already shown more honor than we dared hope for." "Save the speeches for after we're all safe," Chen replied, but she smiled despite the gravity of the situation. As the Resilience began its approach to the damaged transport, the Karthak ships regrouped in the distance. Chen could see them on the tactical display, organizing for what would undoubtedly be their final attack. Time was running out, and the real test of human determination was about to begin. The docking procedure took place in the shadow of approaching death. Captain Chen watched through the bridge view screen as the Resilience maneuvered alongside the damaged Zephyrian transport Wind Whisper. The larger ship was a heartbreaking sight, its elegant curves marred by blast damage, atmosphere leaking from multiple hull breaches like blood from mortal wounds. "Docking clamps engaged," reported Chief Rodriguez from engineering. "Hull seal is holding, but, barely. That ship won't survive another hour." Through the reinforced windows of the transport's emergency airlock, Chen could see figures moving, tall, graceful beings with feathers that flickered between deep blues and purples, colors that she had learned indicated fear and desperation in Zephyrian emotional language. "Captain," Commander Blake said quietly, "the Karthak ships are holding position about 10,000 kilometers out. They're watching us." Chen nodded grimly. The pirates weren't stupid. They could see what the humans were attempting, and they were content to wait. Once both ships were locked together in the vulnerable docking configuration, a single coordinated attack could destroy them both. "How long for complete passenger transfer?" she asked. "Dr. Reeves estimates 25 minutes for all 47 survivors," Blake replied. "Some of them are injured, and will need to accommodate different atmospheric requirements." 25 minutes. Chen felt the weight of every passing second. In the distance, the Karthak raiders waited like patient vultures. "Torres, open a channel to our assault teams." The Resilience carried a complement of 20 security personnel, primarily trained for exploration hazards and first contact situations. They weren't Marines, but they would have to do. "Security Chief Patel here, Captain." "Chief, I need you to coordinate the evacuation with Dr. Reeves. Priority goes to the children first, then, injured adults." "Understood. My teams are already in position at the airlocks." Chen switched to the engineering channel. "Rodriguez, what's our power situation?" "We're running hot from the emergency burn to get here." I can give you full shields and weapons for maybe 15 minutes before we start risking system failures. 15 minutes of combat capability against 3 dedicated warships. The mathematics of survival were not encouraging. The first evacuees began crossing from the Wind Whisper to the Resilience. Chen's heart clenched as she watched the initial group, 5 small Zephyrian cubs, their normally iridescent feathers dulled to gray with fear and exhaustion. They moved on 4 legs with a grace that reminded Chen of young deer, but their large eyes held an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. Dr. Reeves had done her homework on Zephyrian physiology. The cubs were guided to a specially prepared section of the medical bay where the atmosphere had been adjusted for their respiratory needs. Human crew members knelt beside them, offering water and speaking in soft, reassuring tones despite the language barrier. The universal language of kindness transcended species. Captain Williams called from the sensor station, "The Karthak ships are starting to move. Looks like they're taking position for an attack run." Chen studied the tactical display. The 3 raider ships were spreading out into an attack formation that would allow them to hit both the Resilience and the Wind Whisper from multiple angles simultaneously. Time until they're in weapons range. 8 minutes. The evacuation continued with desperate efficiency. More cubs crossed over, followed by their adult caretakers. Chen watched as her crew worked tirelessly to help beings they had never seen before, from a world they might never visit. Ensign Williams abandoned his sensor station to help carry an injured Zephyrian adult, his young face set with determination. Lieutenant Torres coordinated communications while simultaneously helping to distribute emergency supplies. This was humanity at its best, Chen reflected. When faced with suffering, they didn't calculate odds or consider profits. They simply acted. Through the evacuation report streaming to her chair, Chen learned more about the refugees. They weren't just survivors of the Kepler-7 disaster, many were families who had lost everything. The mining platform failure had destroyed not just the facility but several civilian habitats in orbit. These people represented nearly everything that remained of their colony. Captain Anthali herself was among the last to cross over. Chen had expected a military bearing, but the Zephyrian captain moved with the careful grace of someone carrying emotional wounds as deep as any physical injury. Her feathers shifted constantly between deep blue and silver, colors that Chen's briefings had indicated meant profound sadness mixed with desperate hope. "Captain Chen," Anthali said as she was helped aboard, her voice carrying the melodic quality common to her species. "I must speak with you." Chen left the bridge under Commander Blake's supervision and met the Zephyrian captain in the main corridor. Up close, Anthali was even more striking, nearly 7 feet tall, with feathers that seemed to capture and reflect light in patterns Chen had never seen before. But, her large eyes, which should have sparkled with inner light, were dimmed by loss. "Captain," Anthali began, "my people are aboard your ship. You have fulfilled your promise. But, you must know, the Karthak will not let any of us escape. They have been hunting our group for weeks, ever since we fled Kepler-7. They want something we carry." Chen frowned. "What kind of cargo?" "Not cargo. Knowledge. Several of our passengers are scientists who were working on advanced agricultural techniques before the disaster. The Karthak believe they can force my people to work for them, developing food production systems for their slave worlds." The revelation hit Chen like a physical blow. This wasn't just a random pirate attack, it was a targeted hunt for valuable prisoners. The Karthak had no intention of simply destroying the ships and taking salvage. They wanted to capture the Zephyrian scientists alive. "That changes our tactical situation," Chen said grimly. "They won't risk damaging us too severely if they think we have their prizes aboard." "You don't understand," Anthali said, her feathers shifting to deeper blue. "They will disable your ship and board it. Your crew will be killed or enslaved. You have doomed yourselves for strangers." Chen looked through the transparent aluminum of the corridor window. She could see Karthak ships moving closer, their dark hulls designed for intimidation as much as combat. But, she also saw her crew members helping Zephyrian cubs to safety, sharing their own emergency rations with adult refugees, and, working together despite having no common language beyond basic galactic standard. Captain Anthony, Chen said finally, let me tell you something about humans. We have a saying, better to light a single candle than curse the darkness. Your people were in the dark, facing death and slavery. We're the candle. Anthony tilted her head in a gesture Chen recognized as confusion. I do not understand your species. Logic dictates that you should have maintained safe distance and reported our location to authorities. Instead, you risk everything for beings you've never met. Sometimes logic isn't enough, Chen replied. Sometimes you have to do what's right, even when it's not smart. Before Anthony could respond, the ship's alarm klaxons began wailing. Chen ran for the bridge, the Zephyrian captain following closely behind. Report. Chen called as she entered the command center. Karthak ships have begun their attack run, Blake announced. They're coming in fast from 3 vectors. Time to weapons range, 90 seconds. Chen dropped into her captain's chair and quickly assessed the situation. The evacuation was nearly complete, 43 of the 47 Zephyrian survivors were aboard the Resilience. But, the ships were still locked in the docking configuration, making them sitting targets. Engineering, prepare for emergency undocking. Captain, Rodriguez's voice came through the intercom with strain, if we undock now, the Windwhisper will lose structural integrity immediately. There are still 4 people aboard. 4 lives. Chen closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command crush down on her shoulders. 4 lives against her entire crew. The mathematics of survival were cruel and unforgiving. Who's still aboard the transport? She asked. Dr. Reeves' voice answered from medical, 2 injured adults and 2 cubs. They're in critical condition, moving them now could kill them. Time to complete the medical transfer. At least 5 minutes for safe transport. Chen looked at the tactical display. The Karthak ships would be in weapons range in less than 90 seconds. There was no way to safely complete the evacuation and escape. All stations, prepare for combat. Keep us docked with the transport. Captain, Blake protested, that's suicide. We can't maneuver effectively while we're locked to the Windwhisper. We're not running, Chen said quietly. Red alert. All crew to battle stations. The bridge lighting shifted to crimson, and, throughout the ship, Chen could hear the sound of her crew preparing for what might be their final battle. They moved with efficiency and determination, even though they all understood the odds against them. Weapons systems online, reported Park from Tactical. Forward and aft plasma cannons ready. Point defense systems armed. Shields at maximum power, added Rodriguez. I'm routing all non-essential power to defensive systems. Chen watched the approaching Karthak ships on her screen. They moved with predatory grace, clearly confident in their victory. The lead ship was already charging its main weapons, heavy plasma cannons capable of punching through the Resilience's shields in just a few hits. Incoming transmission from the lead Karthak vessel, Torres reported. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge was harsh and guttural, speaking accented galactic standard. Human ship, you will surrender the Zephyrian passengers immediately. Comply and, your deaths will be swift. Chen stood and faced the main screen. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human ship Resilience. The Zephyrians are under our protection. Withdraw immediately. Harsh laughter echoed from the speakers. Protection. You are one small ship against 3 of our raiders. You cannot protect yourself, much less alien refugees. Try us. The channel closed, leaving the bridge in tense silence. 30 seconds to weapons range. Captain, Williams called from sensors, I'm detecting a 4th ship. It was hiding behind the moon, but it's moving to join the attack. 4 ships now. Chen felt a bitter smile cross her face. She had always known her exploration career would probably end badly. Deep space was dangerous, and exploration ships were often alone when crisis struck. She had just never imagined it would be while defending alien children. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's intercom. "In 30 seconds, we will engage enemy vessels in defense of civilian refugees. I want everyone to know that serving with you has been the highest honor of my career. Whatever happens next, we face it together." The crew's responses came from throughout the ship, acknowledgments of her words, expressions of pride and determination. Chen felt a surge of emotion that she quickly suppressed. There would be time for sentiment later, assuming they lived through the next few minutes. "Weapons range in 15 seconds, Park announced. "Target the lead ship's engines," Chen ordered. "If we can disable one of them, the others might reconsider their odds." Targeting systems locked on. Chen gripped her chair's armrests and prepared for battle. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency of professionals who had trained together for years. They were explorer, not warriors, but they would fight with everything they had. The first Carthax ship opened fire, its plasma cannons painting space with deadly energy. The Resilience shuddered as the beams impacted her shields, energy cascading across the defensive barriers like water over a transparent dome. "Shields down to 70%, Rodriguez reported. "Return fire." The human ship's weapons struck back, her plasma cannons sending answering bolts of energy toward the attacking raiders. One beam struck the lead Carthax ship's forward shields, causing them to flare with brilliant light. The pirate vessel altered course slightly but continued its attack. More energy beams lanced through space as the other 3 Carthax ships joined the battle. The Resilience was caught in a crossfire, her shields flaring constantly as they absorbed hit after hit. Warning alarms began sounding as systems overloaded under the bombardment. "Shields down to 40%, Rodriguez called. "I can't maintain this much longer." Chen watched her tactical display, looking for any advantage she could exploit. The Carthax ships were faster and more maneuverable, but they were also overconfident. They were treating this like target practice rather than a real battle. "Park, concentrate all fire on the lead ship's starboard weapons array. Focused fire, aye." The Resilience's weapons converged on a single target, and Chen watched with satisfaction as the concentrated plasma beams overwhelmed the raider's shields and struck its hull. Atmosphere vented from the damaged ship as its starboard weapons went offline. But the victory was short-lived. The other 3 ships intensified their attack, and the Resilience's shields began failing under the sustained bombardment. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported damage control teams. Emergency bulkheads are holding." Chen realized they had perhaps 2 minutes before shield failure would leave them defenseless. 2 minutes to complete the evacuation and somehow escape 4 enemy warships. It was then that Captain Anthony spoke from beside Chen's chair. The Zephyrian had remained on the bridge, watching the battle with her large, intelligent eyes. "Captain Chen," she said, her melodic voice cutting through the noise of combat, "my people have a saying as well. The storm reveals the strength of the tree. Today, you have shown us the strength of humanity." Chen managed a grim smile. "Save the poetry for after we survive this." But, even as she said it, she wondered if any of them would live to remember this moment. The Carthax ships were closing in for the kill, and the Resilience was running out of options fast. The battle raged around the joined ships as Dr. Elizabeth Reeves worked frantically in the medical bay of the Windwhisper. The damaged transport shuddered with each impact from the ongoing firefight, its weakened hull groaning under stress that it was never designed to endure. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as she and her medical team fought to stabilize the last 4 Zephyrian survivors. "Doctor," called medical technician Harper, his voice tight with concentration, "the adult male is showing signs of severe respiratory distress. His lung capacity is failing." Reeves moved quickly to examine the patient. The Zephyrian male was unconscious, his normally vibrant feathers dulled to an alarming gray. His breathing was labored, and she could see the telltale signs of internal bleeding from the mining platform explosion weeks earlier. "We need to get him to proper surgical facilities immediately," she said. "Prep him for emergency transport." Across the medical bay, 2 Zephyrian cubs lay on makeshift stretchers. Both were unconscious, victims of radiation exposure from the Kepler-7 disaster. Their small bodies were fighting a losing battle against cellular damage that would prove fatal without immediate treatment. The 4th survivor was an elderly Zephyrian female who had refused to leave the cub's side. Despite her own injuries, she held vigil over the young ones, her feathers shifting between protective gold and deep blue sorrow. "Grandmother Cylindra," Reeves said in careful galactic standard, "you need medical attention too." The elderly Zephyrian looked up with eyes that held ancient wisdom and profound sadness. "These cubs have no family left, human healer. Someone must stay with them so they do not die alone." Reeves felt a stab of emotion. In all her years of emergency medicine, she had seen countless tragedies, but there was something particularly heartbreaking about this moment. Here was an entire species facing extinction from disaster and warfare, yet this grandmother prioritized the emotional needs of orphan children over her own physical survival. Another impact shook the ship, more violent than before. The lights flickered, and Reeves heard the ominous sound of hull plating beginning to fail. "Harper, we're out of time. Begin emergency transport now." "Doctor, moving them in this condition could kill them. Leaving them here definitely will." Reeves activated her communicator. "Medical to bridge. We're beginning emergency transport of the final survivors. Estimated completion in 3 minutes." Captain Chen's voice came through immediately, tense with combat stress. "Understood, Doctor. We'll hold position." As her medical team carefully lifted the first cub onto a transport gurney, Reeves marveled at the situation they found themselves in. When she had joined the exploration service 8 years ago, she had envisioned treating exotic space diseases and conducting xenobiological research. She had never imagined fighting to save alien children while under fire from pirates. The transport process was agonizingly slow. Each survivor had to be moved carefully through the docking tube while the ship shook with weapons impacts. The elderly Zephyrian, Grandmother Cylindra, insisted on walking despite her injuries, her 4-legged gait unsteady but determined. "Why do your people do this?" she asked Reeves as they made their way toward the Resilience. "Your captain risks all your lives for strangers. This is not logical behavior." Reeves helped steady the elderly alien as another impact rocked both ships. "I don't think logic has much to do with it," she replied. We can't stand by and watch children suffer. Even alien children. Even when it costs everything. Especially then. They reached the relative safety of the Resilience's medical bay just as the final survivor, the critically injured adult male, was brought through. Reeves immediately began working to stabilize him while her medical team attended to the cubs. Through the medical bay's speakers, she could hear the ongoing battle. Weapons fire, damage reports, and the steady commands of Captain Chen as she fought to keep them all alive. The ship shuddered constantly under enemy fire, and Reeves knew their shields couldn't hold much longer. On the bridge, Captain Chen watched her tactical display with growing desperation. The Resilience had managed to damage 2 of the 4 Carthax ships, but the remaining raiders were pressing their attack with renewed fury. Her own ship's shields were failing, and multiple systems were beginning to shut down from overload. "Shields down to 15%, Chief Rodriguez reported. I'm detecting hull stress fractures on decks 4 through 7. Weapons status? Forward plasma cannons are offline, said Lieutenant Commander Park. Aft cannons still operational, but we're low on power." Chen calculated their remaining options. The evacuation was complete, but they were still docked to the Windwhisper, making complex maneuvers impossible. The Carthax ships had them surrounded, and it was only a matter of minutes before the shields failed completely. "Captain," Commander Blake said quietly, "perhaps it's time to consider surrender." If we can negotiate, no. Chen's voice was firm. They want to enslave those scientists. That's not happening on my watch. Captain Anthony, who had remained on the bridge throughout the battle, stepped forward. Her feathers had shifted to deep purple, a color Chen had learned indicated profound respect mixed with sorrow. Captain Chen, you have already done more than anyone could ask. My people are safe aboard your ship. You have fulfilled every obligation of honor and decency. There is no shame in surrender now. Chen looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They were tired, frightened, but still determined. These people had followed her into an impossible situation because they believed in something greater than their own survival. Torres, she said, open a channel to all frequencies. Channel open, Captain. Chen stood and faced the main screen, knowing that her words would be heard not just by the Karthak raiders but by both crews aboard the joined ships. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human exploration ship Resilience. To any vessels in this system, we are currently engaged in defending civilian refugees against pirate attack. Our position is. She gave their exact coordinates. Any ships capable of rendering assistance are requested to respond immediately. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Chen knew the chances of another ship being within range were minimal, but she had to try every option. Captain, Williams called from sensors, the Karthak ships are closing for what looks like a final attack. They're concentrating all firepower on our docking section. The enemy plan was obvious, disable the connection between the ships, then, board both vessels while they drifted helpless. Once aboard, the pirates could take whatever prisoners they wanted and kill the rest. Emergency undocking, Chen ordered. All hands, prepare for impact. Captain, the Wind Whisper will break apart the moment we release docking clamps, Rodriguez warned. The evacuation is complete. There's no one left aboard. Understood. Initiating emergency undocking sequence. The Resilience separated from the damaged transport with violent shuddering as docking clamps released and umbilicals detached. The Wind Whisper, its hull already weakened beyond survival limits, immediately began breaking apart under the stress of separation. Chen watched through the view screen as the ship that had carried refugees to safety finally succumbed to its injuries, scattering debris across space. Free of the docking connection, the Resilience could finally maneuver, but it was too little, too late. The Karthak ships had used the separation process to close distance, and they were now in optimal attack position. Incoming missiles, Park announced. Multiple warheads targeted on our engine section. Point defense, maximum fire. The Resilience's defensive systems engaged, filling space with energy beams designed to intercept incoming projectiles. Several missiles were destroyed, but others slipped through the defensive screen. The ship lurched violently as the warheads impacted, and Chen felt the deck plates vibrate under her feet. Emergency lights began flashing as critical systems failed throughout the vessel. Direct hit on engineering section, Rodriguez reported. We've lost main propulsion. Maneuvering thrusters only. Chen realized with bitter clarity that the battle was over. Without engines, they couldn't escape. Without shields, they couldn't defend themselves. The Karthak had won. All crew, she announced over the intercom, prepare for boarding action. Security teams to repel boarders. All non-essential personnel to emergency stations. As her crew prepared for what would likely be their final battle, Chen found herself thinking about her daughter on Earth. She had always told the girl that sometimes adults had to make difficult choices, that doing the right thing wasn't always the same as doing the smart thing. Today, she had made such a choice. Captain Anthony said, approaching Chen's chair with graceful steps, before the end comes, I must say something to you and your crew. Chen looked at the tall, elegant alien whose people they had fought to save. What is it? In all our centuries of spaceflight, my people have encountered many species. We have seen great intelligence, remarkable technology, impressive military might. But, we have never encountered anything like human compassion. Enthali's feathers shifted to a brilliant gold that Chen had not seen before. Later, she would learn that this color indicated an emotional state that had no exact translation in human language, something between reverence, gratitude, and mystical awe. Your species confounds us, the Zephyrian captain continued. You risk everything for strangers. You fight impossible battles for principles rather than profit. You show mercy to your enemies and kindness to the helpless. My scientists will spend their remaining lives trying to understand the evolutionary forces that created such an illogical yet noble species. Before Chen could respond, the ship's alarm system activated again. But, this time, the tone was different, not the harsh klaxon of combat alert, but the melodic chime that indicated an incoming priority transmission. Captain, Torres called, excitement evident in his voice, I'm receiving a response to our distress call. Multiple ships are approaching at maximum speed. Chen's heart leaped. How many ships? What configuration? I'm reading, 12 vessels. Mixed types, some appear to be civilian, but I'm detecting at least 3 military-grade signatures. The main screen shifted to long-range sensors, and Chen watched in amazement as a fleet of ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They were an eclectic mix, cargo haulers, passenger liners, research vessels, and what appeared to be several armed patrol ships. This is Admiral Corvallis of the Galactic Council patrol ship Harmony, came a voice through the communication system. We received your distress call, Resilience. Hold position, we are moving to assist. Chen laughed, actually laughed, as relief flooded through her. The cavalry had arrived, and it was more diverse than anything she could have imagined. Torres, open a channel to the Carthac ships. Channel open, Captain. Attention Carthac vessels, Chen announced with obvious satisfaction, you are now outnumbered 4-1 by Galactic Council forces. I strongly suggest you withdraw while you still can. The response was immediate. The 4 pirate ships broke off their attack and began accelerating toward the edge of the system, clearly having no interest in fighting a superior force. Should we pursue? Asked Admiral Corvallis. Negative, Admiral. We have civilian refugees aboard who require immediate medical attention. As the rescue fleet approached, Chen felt the tension drain from her shoulders for the first time in hours. They had done it. Against impossible odds, her crew had saved 47 lives and escaped destruction through a combination of courage, determination, and sheer bloody-minded stubbornness. But, as she watched the approaching ships, Chen realized something remarkable was happening. The rescue fleet wasn't just Galactic Council ships. She recognized civilian vessels from at least 6 different species, all of whom had responded to a human distress call to help save complete strangers. Perhaps, she thought, humans weren't the only species in the galaxy with an irrational desire to help others. Perhaps they had just been the first to act on it so dramatically that it inspired others to follow their example. The battle was over, but Chen suspected that its consequences would ripple through the galaxy for years to come. 3 weeks after the rescue, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the medical ward of Stellar Station Kepler, watching through reinforced windows as Zephyrian cubs played in a specially designed recreation area. Their feathers had regained much of their natural iridescence, shifting between bright yellows and greens that indicated joy and contentment. The sight filled Chen with a satisfaction deeper than any commendation or medal could provide. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves approached, carrying a medical tablet and wearing an expression of cautious optimism. The radiation treatments are working better than we hoped, she reported. All 23 cubs are showing significant improvement. The 2 who were in critical condition during the evacuation are now stable and should make full recoveries. Chen nodded, but her attention remained focused on the children. Through the universal translator, she could hear fragments of their conversation, questions about the strange new foods they were being offered, excitement about the artificial gravity systems they had never experienced, and innocent wonderment about the humans who had risked everything to save them. Any word on permanent placement? Chen asked. Actually, yes. Reeves' smile widened. Something unprecedented is happening. We've received offers of sanctuary from 47 different worlds, representing 23 species across the galaxy. Chen turned in surprise. 47 worlds. The story of what we did has spread throughout the galactic communication networks. Species that have never shown interest in refugee assistance are suddenly offering homes, education, and full citizenship to our survivors. Through the window, Chen watched as one of the smallest cubs attempted to communicate with a maintenance robot, chittering in musical tones while the machine responded with helpful beeps and lights. The sight reminded her why they had taken such enormous risks. There's something else, Dr. Reeves continued. Captain Anthony has requested a meeting with you. She says it's urgent. Chen found the Zephyrian captain in the station's diplomatic quarters, a section designed to accommodate the environmental needs of various species. Anthony stood before a large viewscreen showing the spectacular binary star system that illuminated this region of space, her feathers shifting in complex patterns that indicated deep contemplation. Captain Chen, Anthony said without turning, I have spent these past weeks trying to understand your species. I have reviewed every piece of human literature, philosophy, and history available in the galactic databases. Chen took a seat designed for humanoid physiology, noting that someone had thoughtfully provided refreshments suitable for both species. Find any answers? Anthony finally turned, her large eyes reflecting the starlight from the view screen. Yes, but they only lead to more questions. Your people have a concept that translates poorly into other languages. You call it moral courage. The willingness to do what is right regardless of personal cost. Most species have similar concepts. No, Anthony said firmly, her feathers shifting to deep blue. Most species have concepts of duty, honor, obligation. But these are typically tied to tribal loyalty, genetic imperatives, or social contracts. Human moral courage extends beyond any logical boundary. You risk yourselves for complete strangers, across species lines, without hope of reward or even recognition. Chen considered this. I'm not sure we're that unique. Look at the ships that came to our rescue. They weren't all human vessels. But, they came because humans set the example, Anthony replied. For the first time in recorded galactic history, one species demonstrated that absolute moral principles could override survival instincts. The other species who responded to your distress call were inspired by human actions, not following their own natural inclinations. Before Chen could respond, her communicator chimed with an urgent message from Admiral Corvallis. The Galactic Council had requested her immediate presence for a formal debriefing about the incident. As she prepared to leave, Anthony spoke again. Captain, there is something my people must tell yours. The knowledge that the Karthak sought, our agricultural techniques, they were more valuable than you knew. With the proper application, they could transform barren worlds into gardens, feed billions across the galaxy. Chen paused at the threshold. Why are you telling me this? Because my people have decided to share this knowledge freely with the Galactic Council, to be distributed to any world that needs it. We call it the Chen Protocol, in honor of what your crew sacrificed for strangers. The formal debriefing took place in the Galactic Council's sector headquarters aboard the massive station. Chen found herself in a chamber designed to accommodate representatives from dozens of species, each delegation seated in environmental pods suited to their physiological needs. Admiral Corvallis, a distinguished Centaurian with the characteristic golden skin of his species, presided over the session. Captain Chen, your actions during the Zephyrian rescue have created complications for Council policy. Chen straightened in her chair. What kind of complications, Admiral? The kind that challenge our fundamental understanding of interspecies relations, replied Counselor Vex High, a crystalline being whose communications came through harmonic resonances. For 3 centuries, the Council has operated on the principle of enlightened self-interest. Species cooperate for mutual benefit, trade for profit, and render aid when it serves their strategic interests. Your actions, continued Counselor Mordan of the Aquatic Depths Dwellers, represent a complete abandonment of logical decision-making. Yet the results have been. The translator struggled with the concept before settling on, unexpectedly beneficial for galactic stability. Chen looked around the chamber, noting the variety of species represented. I'm not sure I understand the problem. Admiral Corvallis activated a holographic display showing galactic communication traffic over the past 3 weeks. This shows the volume of interspecies cooperation requests since news of your rescue spread. Trade agreements, scientific collaborations, humanitarian aid offers, defensive alliances, all up by over 300%. Species that haven't spoken to each other in centuries are suddenly establishing diplomatic relations, added Counselor Vexhai. The hegemony of suns has offered medical aid to their former enemies, the Void Walkers. The crystalline synthesis has opened their archives to organic species for the first time in history. Chen began to understand. They're copying human behavior. More accurately, said Counselor Mordan, they're attempting to. Most species lack the psychological framework to truly embrace illogical compassion. But, they recognize its practical benefits and, are trying to incorporate similar principles into their decision-making processes. The Admiral leaned forward. Captain, we need to understand, how do we codify human moral courage into galactic law? How do we encourage other species to act against their immediate self-interest for the greater good? Chen considered the question carefully. Around her, dozens of alien representatives waited for her response, as if she could speak for all of humanity. You can't, she said finally. You can't legislate compassion or mandate moral courage. It has to come from within, from believing that some things are more important than personal survival or profit. But, how do we teach such beliefs, pressed Counselor Vexhai. You don't teach them. You demonstrate them. You show others that it's possible to act with absolute moral principle, and, you hope they choose to follow that example. The debriefing continued for several hours, but, Chen could see that her answer had frustrated many of the council representatives. They wanted a formula, a policy framework that could replicate human behavior across species lines. The idea that moral courage couldn't be systematized or regulated challenged their fundamental approach to governance. After the formal session ended, Admiral Corvallis approached Chen privately. Captain, there's something you should know. Your actions have created what some council members are calling the human problem. Chen raised an eyebrow. Which is? Humanity has become the moral standard by which other species measure themselves. Every major decision now includes the question, what would humans do in this situation? It's causing significant political upheaval across multiple systems. That sounds like a good thing. Maybe. But, it's also putting tremendous pressure on your species. Every human action is now scrutinized for moral implications. Some council members worry that humans will either become impossibly self-righteous or crack under the pressure of being everyone's ethical compass. Chen thought about this as she returned to the medical section to check on the Zephyrian survivors. The cubs were settling in well, their natural curiosity helping them adapt to their temporary home. But, it was the adult refugees who provided the most insight into the larger implications of their rescue. She found several Zephyrian scientists working with station personnel to establish communication protocols with the various worlds that had offered sanctuary. The sight of former enemies collaborating on refugee placement would have been impossible just weeks earlier. Dr. Schulthys, one of the lead agricultural scientists, approached Chen with obvious excitement. Captain, you must see this, she said, her feathers bright yellow with enthusiasm. The Void Walker Collective has requested our assistance in terraforming their outer colonies. The same species that once enslaved entire worlds now wants to feed them instead. People can change, Chen replied, though privately she wondered if the change was genuine or simply calculated to appear more human-like. Not just people, Dr. Schulthys corrected. Entire civilizations are reconsidering their basic assumptions about survival and cooperation. Your species has introduced a new variable into galactic politics, the possibility that doing good is more important than doing well. That evening, Chen stood alone in her quarters aboard the Resilience, which was docked at the station for repairs. The ship had suffered significant damage during the battle, but the crew had refused transfer to other vessels. They wanted to repair their ship and continue their mission together. Through her viewport, she could see the traffic around Stellar Station Kepler, more ships than the facility had ever hosted simultaneously. Representatives from across the galaxy had come to witness the aftermath of what media outlets were calling the Zephyrian miracle. Her contemplation was interrupted by a communication from Earth. The face that appeared on her screen was achingly familiar, her daughter Emma, now 13 years old and more beautiful than Chen remembered. "Mom!" Emma's excited voice filled the small quarters. "I've been following the news feeds about what you did. Everyone at school is talking about it. They're calling you the captain who changed the galaxy." Chen smiled, feeling the familiar ache of missing her daughter's daily presence. "I just did what felt right, sweetheart." "I know, but that's what makes it so amazing. Dad says that humans have always helped others, but this was the first time the whole galaxy was watching. He says you showed everyone what humans are really like inside. What do you think?" Chen asked. Emma's expression grew thoughtful, displaying maturity beyond her years. "I think you proved that being human means never leaving children behind, no matter who they are or where they come from." After the call ended, Chen reflected on her daughter's words. Perhaps that was the real answer to the Council's question about teaching moral courage. It couldn't be legislated or systematized, but it could be inherited, passed down from one generation to the next through example and story. The next morning brought news that would reshape the political landscape of the galaxy. The Karthak Confederation, the same species whose raiders had attacked the Zephyrian refugees, had issued a formal statement requesting admission to the Galactic Council. Their leaders cited observations of human behavioral models as motivation for abandoning their raider culture. Chen read the news with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Could an entire species really abandon centuries of predatory behavior because they witnessed one act of interspecies compassion? Or was this simply a calculated political move designed to appear more acceptable to galactic society? Time would tell. But, as she watched Zephyrian cubs playing with human children in the station's mixed-species recreation areas, Chen allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy was about to become a much better place to live. 1 year after the Zephyrian rescue, Captain Sarah Chen stood before the largest assembly in Galactic Council history. Representatives from over 200 species filled the massive chamber aboard the Council's capital station, their various environmental suits and communication devices creating a symphony of lights, sounds, and movements that would have been chaotic to witness a year earlier. Now, Chen recognized it as harmony. The ceremonial uniform felt strange after months of standard exploration gear. Today marked the official establishment of the Chen Doctrine, the first galactic treaty based on moral principle rather than mutual benefit. Chen still wasn't entirely comfortable with having an interstellar policy named after her, but she understood its symbolic importance. Admiral Corvallis stood at the central podium, his golden Centaurian features serious as he addressed the assembly. 1 year ago, we witnessed an action that challenged our fundamental understanding of rational behavior. Today, we gather to formally recognize that some principles transcend logic, profit, and even survival. In the gallery reserved for special guests, Chen could see Captain Anthali and several of the adult Zephyrian survivors. The cubs, now thriving children scattered across dozens of worlds, were represented by holographic images that rotated around the chamber. Each image showed a young Zephyrian integrated into a new society, learning new cultures while maintaining their own heritage. The Chen Doctrine, Admiral Corvallis continued, establishes the principle that all council members have an obligation to render aid to children of any species, regardless of political relationships, economic considerations, or strategic implications. Chen watched the voting displays around the chamber. The measure was passing by an overwhelming margin, but she noticed some abstentions from species known for their isolationist policies. Change, even positive change, never came without resistance. Counselor Vex High, the crystalline being whose harmonic communications had been translated into dozens of languages simultaneously, rose to speak. This doctrine represents more than policy. It represents an evolution in galactic civilization. For the first time, we formally acknowledge that morality can override pragmatism. The formal ceremony continued for hours, but Chen's mind wandered to the events that had led to this moment. The past year had been a whirlwind of consequences from that single decision to answer a distress call. The Zephyrian agricultural techniques, freely shared under the Chen Protocol, had already begun transforming barren worlds into productive colonies. The Void Walker Collective had successfully terraformed 3 previously uninhabitable planets, providing new homes for displaced populations from various conflicts. More surprisingly, the Karthak Confederation had indeed abandoned their raider culture. Under new leadership, they had applied for Galactic Council membership and were currently in their 3rd year of probationary status. Their transformation hadn't been easy, decades of predatory behavior couldn't be erased overnight, but their commitment to change appeared genuine. The ripple effects extended beyond politics and policy. Interspecies adoption had increased by over 400%, with families across the galaxy opening their homes to children from other worlds. Mixed species colonies were becoming common, creating new hybrid cultures that combined the best elements of their constituent civilizations. Trade relationships had evolved beyond simple economic exchange. Species were sharing knowledge, art, and technology with an openness that previous generations would have considered naive. The galaxy was becoming more interconnected, more cooperative, and, arguably more vulnerable, but also more resilient. After the formal ceremony, Chen found herself at a reception hosted by the council. She moved through crowds of delegates, accepting congratulations and answering questions about human motivations and decision-making processes. The questions had become familiar over the past year, but they still puzzled her. Captain Chen, called a voice behind her. She turned to see Dr. Morthek, a respected xenopsychologist from the academic consortium. I've been studying human behavior patterns for my research on interspecies cooperation. May I ask you something? Of course. In all my analysis, I cannot identify the evolutionary advantage of your species' extreme altruism. Helping one's own genetic group makes sense. Helping allied species provide strategic benefits. But, risking everything for complete strangers from unrelated evolutionary lines. He gestured helplessly with 4 appendages. It should have been eliminated by natural selection millions of years ago. Chen had heard variations of this question countless times. Maybe that's exactly why it wasn't eliminated. Maybe the universe needs species that act against their own logical self-interest. But, why? What purpose does it serve? Before Chen could answer, a commotion near the chamber's main entrance drew everyone's attention. A group of young beings had entered the reception, the first graduating class of the Galactic Youth Exchange Program, another initiative inspired by the Zephyrian Rescue. Chen watched in amazement as the group approached. 20 young individuals representing 15 different species, all wearing the same uniform of the exchange program. They moved together with the easy familiarity of siblings, despite representing radically different evolutionary paths. The group's leader, a young human named David Martinez, stepped forward. Captain Chen, on behalf of the exchange program's first graduating class, we wanted to thank you. Thank me for what? A young Zephyrian, her feathers bright with excitement, spoke up. For showing the galaxy that family isn't about genetics or species or homeworlds. It's about caring for each other no matter what. One by one, the other graduates spoke. A crystalline being whose harmonic voice created beautiful patterns in the air. A young centaurian whose golden skin glowed with pride. An aquatic representative in a sophisticated mobility suit. Each shared their story of how the exchange program had given them a broader family across species lines. You see, David said, we're the answer to Dr. Morthek's question. This is why humans evolved the way they did. Not to serve human interests, but to show everyone else what's possible. Chen felt tears forming in her eyes. She looked around the reception at representatives from across the galaxy, many of them watching the young graduates with expressions of wonder and hope. These children didn't see species barriers or evolutionary differences. They saw family. "Captain," came a familiar melodic voice. Captain Anthali approached, her feathers shifting between gold and silver in patterns Chen had learned indicated deep respect mixed with joy. "There is something you must see." Anthali led Chen to a private viewing area overlooking the station's main docking bay. Through the reinforced windows, Chen could see ships from dozens of worlds, their various designs creating a beautiful chaos of curves, angles, and materials. "Look closer," Anthali urged. Chen activated the window's magnification feature and gasped. Every ship bore the same symbol, a simple design showing hands of different shapes reaching toward a central star. She recognized it as the unofficial emblem of what media outlets had dubbed the Compassion Fleet, vessels that had volunteered for emergency response missions across the galaxy. "Over 3,000 ships have joined," Anthali explained. "Military vessels, cargo haulers, research ships, even luxury liners. Their crews volunteer for rescue missions, disaster relief, and humanitarian aid. All because one human captain decided that saving children was worth any risk." Chen studied the ships, representing the technological and artistic traditions of countless worlds. "How do they coordinate? How do they decide where to go?" "The same way you decided to help us," Anthali replied. "They listen for distress calls, and they respond. No committees, no bureaucracy, no political calculations. Just beings helping other beings because it's right." A new voice interrupted their conversation. "Captain Chen." Chen turned to see a young human officer she didn't recognize, wearing the insignia of the Exploration Service. "I'm Lieutenant Sarah Kim," the young woman said. "I was named after you, actually. My parents heard about the Zephyrian rescue while my mother was pregnant." Chen smiled. "I hope you live up to the name better than I have. Actually, that's why I'm here. I'm reporting for duty aboard the Resilience. The Admiralty approved my transfer request." "Transfer request?" Lieutenant Kim's expression grew serious. "Captain, since the Zephyrian incident, applications for exploration service have increased by over 800%. Everyone wants to serve on ships that might face the same choices you faced. They want the chance to prove that humans really are what the galaxy thinks we are." Chen considered this revelation. The rescue had created expectations for her species that might be impossible to maintain. Every human action was now scrutinized for moral implications, and every human failure was seen as a betrayal of galactic trust. "Lieutenant," she said carefully, "what we did wasn't special because we were human. It was special because it was right. Any species could have made the same choice. But they didn't," Lieutenant Kim replied. "We did. And that's made all the difference." Later that evening, Chen found herself alone in her quarters aboard the repaired Resilience. The ship felt different now, not just because of the new equipment and improved systems, but because of what it represented. They were no longer just an exploration vessel. They had become a symbol of hope for the galaxy. Her communication system activated, showing an incoming message from Earth. Chen's daughter Emma appeared on the screen, now 14 and looking more mature than ever. "Mom, I watched the ceremony today." The whole planet did, actually. There were viewing parties in every city. "What did you think?" Emma's expression grew thoughtful. "I'm proud of you, but I'm also scared. Everyone expects humans to always do the right thing now. What happens when we disappoint them?" Chen considered her daughter's wisdom. "Then, we learn from our mistakes and try to do better next time. That's all anyone can do. Dad says you've changed how the entire galaxy thinks about morality and cooperation. I think the galaxy was ready to change." We just happened to be in the right place to give them permission. After the call ended, Chen walked to the observation deck where she found Commander Blake and several crew members watching the traffic around the council station. Ships from across the galaxy moved in carefully orchestrated patterns, their running lights creating streams of color against the cosmic dark. "Remarkable sight," Blake commented. "A year ago, half these species wouldn't have been in the same star system voluntarily." "Things change," Chen replied. "Yes, but usually not this fast or this dramatically. What we did, it's like we threw a stone into a still pond. The ripples just keep spreading." Chen thought about the metaphor. Maybe that's what the universe needed. Someone to throw the stone. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves joined them, carrying a medical tablet displaying the latest reports from the scattered Zephyrian children. All 23 cubs are thriving in their new homes. More importantly, they're serving as ambassadors for cross-species cooperation in their adoptive communities. "Any regrets?" Chen asked her medical officer. Reeves looked puzzled. "About what?" "About risking everything for strangers. About changing our lives forever with a single decision." "Captain," Reeves said with a smile, "I became a doctor to save lives. This past year, we've helped save an entire approach to galactic civilization. If that's not worth the risk, what is?" As Chen looked around at her crew, these remarkable people who had followed her into an impossible situation because they believed in doing right, she realized that Dr. Morthek's question about evolutionary advantage missed the point entirely. Humans hadn't evolved extreme altruism despite its apparent disadvantages. They had evolved it because the universe needed beings who would act beyond logic, beyond self-interest, beyond species loyalty. The galaxy needed someone to demonstrate that morality could triumph over pragmatism, that compassion could override calculation. The Zephyrian rescue had proven that such beings existed. But, more importantly, it had inspired others to follow their example. The real achievement wasn't saving 47 refugees from pirates. It was showing the galaxy that impossible choices weren't impossible after all. As the Resilience prepared for its next mission, a routine scientific survey that might or might not become something more significant, Chen reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy was still dangerous, still full of conflict and suffering. But it was also full of beings who now believed that help could come from unexpected sources, that children of any species deserved protection, and that doing the right thing was always possible. The greatest honor humans could claim wasn't that they were the strongest or smartest species in the galaxy. It was that they were the first to prove that moral courage was contagious, and that the simple act of helping a child could change everything. In her final log entry before departing the council station, Captain Sarah Chen wrote, "The rescue of the Zephyrian refugees demonstrated that no choice is impossible when the lives of children are at stake. We answered the question, why risk yourselves for alien cubs, with our actions rather than our words? The galaxy heard our answer, we help any child. Today, that philosophy has become galactic law. Tomorrow, it may become universal truth." The Resilience departed into deep space, carrying its crew toward new discoveries and new challenges. Behind them, the galaxy continued its transformation, one rescued child and one changed heart at a time. The humans had thrown their stone into the cosmic pond, and the ripples would continue spreading across the stars for generations to come. In the end, that was perhaps humanity's greatest gift to the universe, not their technology or their courage, but their stubborn insistence that moral principles mattered more than logical calculations. They had proven that evolution could produce beings capable of transcending their own survival instincts in service of a greater good. The galaxy would never be the same. And, in the quiet moments between the stars, Captain Chen allowed herself to believe that this was exactly the change the universe had been waiting for.